welcome to a new episode of Dive Into Reiki, the podcast. I'm Nathalie J, your host, and today I have a guest that I met a few years ago, and he gave me the best Tai Chi and Qigong class I ever had. I do have to recognize I only had two before, but this really changed my mind about those practices. I have Bill Stevens here. Bill Stevens is a member of the Congregation of Christian Brothers, and he taught 25 years in schools before training to become a hospital chaplain. He served as a chaplain for 10 years at three different hospitals in New York and New Jersey. While at St. Peter's Medical Center in New Jersey, he began to experience with people with HIV and AIDS coming into the hospital in the 80s, which led him to establish a nonprofit organization called Chrysalis Ministry to reach out to those who experienced this disease as a death sentence at the time. It was during this 12-year period that Bill incorporated Reiki into his ministry. Bill has studied with teachers such as Kandro Kunsan Choron, Gilbert Gallego, Yakuten Inamoto, Franz Steen, and Caitlin Prasad. So thank you so much for saying yes to the interview.
You're welcome. So delighted to be with you, Natalie.
Yeah, I met you, I think it was in a play day with Francine, and then we had a retreat together in Lancaster. It was such a pleasure to practice together.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember that. That was a great weekend retreat.
You'll come back soon. So I wanted to start, I started the same question, everybody. I always start, what was the first time you came in contact with Reiki? What was your first experience?
Well, I was with my teacher, Penny Neeson. You know, I think I told you maybe that as I started my ministry to people with AIDS, I heard of a chaplain in San Francisco working in the hospitals out there, and he was doing Reiki, and I said, "What is Reiki?" I didn't know what it was, but he gave me the inspiration to find out, and I found the only Reiki master at the time in New Jersey. That was back in 1991, and that I knew of anyway. There may have been others.
Yeah, there was also no internet to look for them.
Exactly, you know, and so I made an arrangement to do a weekend course, and I brought somebody who was living with HIV with me, and a woman, a social worker who was working with the community. So the three of us went out and we did a weekend with this person and Penny Neeson, and we learned level 1 Reiki. And that's and I used that one class for the next 7-8 years, you know, doing my work.
Wow, I love that because we rush so much from Reiki 1 to Reiki 2 to Reiki 3, like as soon as we can, and yet you did amazing work just with your Reiki level 1.
Well, yeah, it was surprising to me. I mean, I didn't, you know, I didn't necessarily have any experience, or was I able to talk with other people who were offering Reiki. So it really, I kept my doing the Reiki mainly because people were having such a positive experience. I wasn't feeling any big amounts of energy myself, but I just went into my meditation and I just followed the instructions that my teacher gave me in level 1 and just trusted. And people just had good experiences, you know, and I was, you know, I just was marveled by what they shared with me, you know. And I remember one time there was a person, I used to offer Reiki in various settings, you know. I would offer Reiki with I go into a support group, and while they were having their support group, if someone wanted to have a Reiki session, I would be in another room. They could just slip out of the group and come and go back into the group. And I remember one person, who had, was really fighting an addiction, and he had some mental issues as well, mental health issues. And he came in for a session, and at the end of the session, he just told me, wow, he had a great experience, the most spiritual experience he ever experienced in his life. And I just said, wow, with him. And it was things like that. I would visit people in the hospital, and I remember going into one particular person who had a lot of pain, and I offered him Reiki, and it helped his pain. It surprised both of us that, wow, the pain went away. And I visited him a few times, and then one of the times I came into the room a few times later, and he would just shout out, "Oh, here comes my pain medication." And I was afraid that the nurses would think I was bringing him some additional drugs.
You were like the secret dealer of painkillers.
Yeah. But it was, because of those experiences and similar ones, that I just persevered. I knew that it was making a difference for people.
I appreciate you so much doing that. I have a lot of my students or people who approach me because of the podcast, and they're so concerned about not feeling all those very strong sensations that some people feel. And when you say that you practice just trusting, right? And it work, I think it's gonna make them feel very much like, okay, I'm okay. I'm not doing anything wrong.
Yes. I think Faustina, that, in his class, he taught me that, that to let go of all. If you feel it, great, it's a gift, but not to focus, put your attention on that, because it's not the essential part of what we're doing.
In the text you sent me a lot of beautiful text. And there was one when I love when you used to start like going to the hospital as a chaplain, that, sometimes you were welcome or not welcome. And then you took away, your color and just learn how to hold the space and be by yourself. You had a beautiful way of explaining that. I don't know if for me, like this is a little bit the same, right? We don't need to sell Reiki with our sensations. We just need to be and hold the space. Could you elaborate a little bit on that experience that you had?
Okay, and the question in particular, would you like to state that again for me?
Like when you really learned that when you started working at the hospitals, that it was all about really letting go of who you were and the color and just hold the space.
Oh, yes. When I was learning my hospital chaplaincy, yeah, I was teaching for 25 years in our schools, and I was in a very structured community life, and the habit, the black habit, the black robes and the collar, and you tend to hide behind that. I mean, this is who you present to the world. That's all they see. They see collar, whatever, and whatever that means to them. And so when I began my hospital chaplaincy, it was kind of like a clinical pastoral education program. It's a very formal, structured training, real great training, and so we had like three different sessions or three different sections, and about 12 weeks each, and so we went through the first section of 12-week training, and my counselor, the one running the program for our particular group of 6 people, um, she gave me the challenge, to just to wear a suit the next time without any collar, no black robes, and I was wow, I was I was getting around 45, 50 years old at the time, And I said, oh, that's a challenge for me. And I tell you, it was a big deal for me, and I uh, went into the hospital the first day, and hi, Bill, hi, brother, hi, brother. They didn't, no one, no one was made any remarks at all, about that, but when I went in the room, it was more of a challenge, when I went in the room without my collar, you know, and but again, sometimes people threw me out of the room because of the collar. They didn't want to see anyone. Uh, but this time I had to go in as Bill Stevens, and that was a different experience. And there's no agenda that people had put on me as I entered the room, and so that was very growthful experience for me. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I love the way you say that, right? Like you couldn't hide or protect behind anything. And I think also when I link that to your Reiki 1 practice, it's a little bit about that, right? You just place your hand and there is nothing to hide, nothing to be, just place your hand. So I love that.
Yes, yes, you're just going into your own meditation, and that was all. That's what you brought. Yes. Didn't have to.
So sorry. So how did you go from your Reiki 1? What made you go like, okay, now I need a little bit of to go further, Reiki 2 or check in with Reiki Master? What was the spark that made you look forward to that?
Well, I heard about. I began to hear people speak about another level, and the opportunity arose that I could. A teacher appeared, that's what always happens, when the student's ready, the teacher appears, and I did go to a Leslie Mondul. She was offering a level 2 class in the same lineage, and so I did take that, and it was in that class that I heard of a teacher in uh, in Maryland, um, and Kunzang, uh, Daichin children. Um, and she was an amazing woman, because she was a nurse up in Vermont who was exposed to Reiki, but but she had a transformative experience and was led to uh, went to a Buddhist teacher who was giving a presentation and became drawn to join the Buddhist community in Maryland, and she was in Vermont, and she left her profession, she left her friends, she left her family. I think she was divorced at the time, but she did have a son, but she made arrangements for him to be taken care of. I think he was going into college at the time, but and she went into this Buddhist community in Maryland, and had incredible experiences just for her own personal growth, and she became involved with the Reiki Jinkai Do lineage, and which was very, Seiji Takamori was one of the prominent people in that lineage, and he was a monk in Japan who got permission to go study over in Nepal and India, and he went up into the mountains and studied with yogis for
Wow.
20 years, and he got deep into the Buddhist meditation practices and deep into the chakra work and energy work and qigong, and so that got all thrown into that teaching of the Reiki Jinkai Do, and uh, and that's what my teacher experienced. And she used to go over to Nepal, uh, maybe once or twice a year, and spend a month there, in meditation with her teachers over there. So when I did about 300 hours of study with her.
Wow.
I did the Reiki Jinkai Do level 1, 2, 3, and I did two deeper teachings with what they call the Buddha inner sense, which were very deep Buddhist practices. So it was challenging for me. I don't think I probably didn't, understand it all, but I was very much exposed to it, and I developed a deeper meditation practice, and I did do the master level with one of her students, and that's when I began to teach Reiki. After I did that,
Wow, that is beautiful.
too, because the whole AIDS uh, development shifted at some point where people didn't have the medications they needed to extend their life, and I was able to begin to teach some of the people that I used to serve, with Reiki. There, I used to began to teach them Reiki, so they could incorporate that into their lives and make that part of their recovery.
For me, it was very moving when I read the paper you sent me, because also a lot of time we approach Reiki as it's going to heal me, like almost like my life is going to get better, right? But when you work with people who at that time, because of lack of meditation, basically, like it's a completely different perspective of what Reiki practice will serve in their case. So I would love to share a little bit of your experience sharing Reiki with, like in the middle of that was an epidemic that it was at the time, a little bit what he gives them. And
Yeah, we used to run the, the biggest part of the Chrysalis Ministry was to create a safe space for people, uh, and so we had a wonderful nun who opened up her retreat house to us, and we did 4-day retreat programs there, and people we just that was a time where people were afraid to come out of their houses or even afraid to tell their family, that they had AIDS because there was such a stigma attached to it. Something very similar, right, to COVID, that kind of that pandemic, all that fear around it, and but they so they came together then at this retreat house, and one day we did for 10 years we did about 4 retreats a year, and about 50, 60 people at a time, and some came back certainly more than once, but the but they would sometimes they would meet relatives there, you know
wow,
they they each had kept their secret from each other. Uh, but it was people from all walks of life, people who were homeless, people who were in shelters, people from Wall Street, people, you know, gay men, straight men and women, people who had that picked up AIDS from drug addiction. It was just women and men together. It was just a great thing for them just to come together and be safe, you know. And then we broke them up into groups, and they had all sorts of different programs going on. But a big part of that was every day we offered them massage and Reiki, whichever they decided to choose, and made that part of the day, 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon. We got massage practitioners, volunteering their time to come at that time to offer this to them. So it's really a wonderful experience for us and for them as well.
wow, that is it's beautiful, because also they were not being touched a lot at the time. People were really scared because they didn't understand the contagion. So for them to receive touch, like
Yes.
being, beautiful, like something not very common.
Yeah, I became a massage practitioner as well for that purpose, because of the almost like the leper, the untouchable, you know, and so they really appreciated that.
And I love, because for me, Reiki makes you feel safe in your body many times. The fact that you created a safe community where they could be safe, I just find it's like a beautiful expression of the Reiki precepts and the Reiki practice as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And from then you went to work with veterans, right? As well, and end of life services?
Okay, but not veterans, but towards the end of the Chrysalis Ministry, I had open heart surgery, like an emergency open heart surgery. So I took some time off, and during that sabbatical year, so to speak, I heard of a end of life program that was being offered up in San Francisco by a Frank Ostateski. And I was kind of drawn to do that, probably because of my own experience around my own open heart surgery and my own experience with the AIDS community. It was very much at the end of life issues.
Yeah.
So this was an opportunity, to go deeper into that and jump in and learn more about the end of life and how I could be with other people and also just for myself personally. So it was a great program, uh, and there's about 25 of us there, and there were doctors, nurses, social workers, chaplains, volunteers. It was a great group of people, and we came together 4 days a month, and then we would go back to where our home was and do some field work. They gave us, that threw us right into the situation so that we could, come back with our experiences each month and talk about them, and also have that experience of being with someone at the end of life. And so there was a hospice run by the Visiting Nurse Association in New Jersey that I asked them if I could just volunteer there and do my field work. And so that's how that all started. And so that was a full year program. We did that. We went out there 4 days each month. And it was, I learned so much. And so the teachers there were just incredible. Incredible teachers.
And now I know, because I saw VN as visiting nurse and I interpreted as veterans. I don't know why. I was like, where did I get it? And it was the VN. So, and can you share a little bit of some of your experience with that, with like that part of end of life, like supporting people?
I ended the program. I asked the visiting nurses if I could get a job there as a chaplain, and that they said yes. And I guess I was 70 years old at the time, and I think I said I would come in 3 days a week. I give myself a little break. And then, but I no sooner got into the work, and then I said, well, I want to let them know that I also would like to offer Reiki to my clients, to my patients, and they had a little problem with it, So they said, well, we have to go before the board of directors and ask them about it, So I had to plead my case before the board of directors, and they put me on probation. Yes, and so what I did first of all, I taught. Then I was teaching Reiki then, so I taught a group of nurses. I threw it out to anyone would like to take a Reiki class, and which they did, and they enjoyed it. And so I would have someone send me patients, since they knew what it was and how they profited by it. So But then I also asked the director, I said, well, whenever you have a real bad day, just give me a call and I'll come by and I'll give you a session. So that happened pretty quickly. Those days for her came up very often. And so she called me and I went in and gave her about a half-hour Reiki session. And she was convinced. I didn't have to, then I had her in my corner after that. And
I love how you keep it so simple, right? Like when you have a bad day, come and try this. Like, like not a lot of blood, just like, you know what, just come.
right, yeah, you did have to experience it, right? Yes, no, don't have to give a big spiel about it.
If someone who is probably either studying one of these programs or working in palliative care or services end of life, what will be the tip you will give them, like when it comes to Reiki, like offering Reiki in this kind of environment?
Say that again.
Like if, for example, I wanted to work probably in hospices or palliative care, and if I were a Reiki practitioner, what tip will you give me to be able to perform well in that environment?
Okay. Uh, what would I share with you to do?
Yeah, like it's my first day tomorrow. Bill, give me 3 things I should do or not do. Yes.
Okay, if you're going to be a hospice practitioner, Reiki practitioner.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I had to learn all that, by my mistakes, And so when I called people, uh, seeing if they wanted to visit, you know, I I I got into the habit of saying Reiki is a spiritual healing practice, which people find very relaxing and comforting. So that's all the information I gave them on the phone. I had about less than a minute, to ask them if they would like me to drop by. So I couldn't go into a big history of Reiki. So I felt that if a person was interested in spirituality or interested in healing, uh, then they would be open to it. And if those words turned them off, then they would say, thanks very much, but no. But that was okay. Um, and so at least the door was open for people who were familiar with those words and wanted, me to come and visit. And when I got into my only equipment, was I had a little sound box, a music box, and I had my stool, and I would, and when I came into the house, or the hospital room, um, I would decide where I wanted to sit. If I came into the house and the person was sitting in a chair, then I brought my stool over to the chair. If they're laying on the couch, I brought my stool right next to the couch. If they're laying in their bedroom, I brought my stool right there. And if I went into a hospital room, instead of dragging chairs around and everything like that, I could just bring my stool right up close to wherever the patient was in the bed. So it's amazing what little space you had there, but you could fit your stool right in there and sit yourself down right beside them. Um, and and then that was where I would start offering Reiki to them. And I wasn't doing a lot of hand positions. It was just like placing your hands off the body, or sometimes just being in your meditation. And but it was amazing, the responses. It's very, 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 very powerful. In the sense of people being relieved of their pain, or people going into a very peaceful and relaxed place, and which was, you never knew what kind of a situation you would go into, and I remember once just going into, um, walked in the door, and as I opened the door, the room was almost totally dark, a couple of lamps in the corner on, and the whole room was lined with people in the chairs, and this bed was in the middle of the room, and two of the woman was in the bed, moaning very loudly, and had two of her children on the bed with her, and the husband was on the side of the bed, and I just went in and opened up my stool, and I was at the end of the bed and began to offer Reiki without saying anything, um, and at one point the husband had to leave the room, and he signaled me to come closer, and but I was there about 45 minutes to an hour, and when finally the woman seemed to stop moaning, and she seemed to be more peaceful, and so I stayed there another half hour, and then I left, and maybe a couple of hours after I left, she passed, and the husband told the social worker, that she had been in this kind of condition, moaning and being very, very anxious, for a couple of weeks. And that was the most peaceful that he had seen her. And she went in and she died very peacefully at that time, So it's things like that, that, you can't say, I always ask myself, what is Reiki, and I don't know. you know, it's something very profound, and it's not anything magical that you do, because I know myself that it's not anything coming from me, it's no magical thing that you're doing, that you kind of just becoming one with the energy, and I love the way that, like, Kathleen Prasad, teaches the Reiki. Um, it's just uh, just becoming one, with the animals, just offering that space to them, but not pushing it on them. But that's something, again, we can talk about. And Franz, but letting me know that this is a spiritual practice. It's not, and the more you do your practice, paying attention to the precepts, opening up your heart, paying attention to the precepts, and practicing your meditation and holding that space. The more you can do that, then healing is a possibility, but you don't have any expectations. You're not trying to figure things out. You're not promising people anything. And say, what is Reiki? I think, a lot of times Franz used to tell us, that just be Reiki, just be love, just be that. And then I think healing is like a side effect of your practice, The more you practice, the more possibilities that there are. Yeah.
And you put it beautifully, and I love what you close it. The more you practice, the more possibilities, right? A lot of time new students, they try to understand it, what is Reiki with the head, and you can only understand through practice. You're not going to figure out things by sensing them. You need to have a deep daily practice to actually have those opportunities for healing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So what is your daily practice then, Bill? Like, because I know you practice, you also have Qigong, you have Tai Chi. So if I could see you in your day, your daily practice, what will it be?
Well, each morning, I do spend time, I go for a walk, and then I come back home, and um, I'll do a half hour to 45 minutes of Tai Chi and Qigong, and that kind of quiets my mind. And then I will do a half hour, 45-minute meditation. Yeah, so I make sure I do that every day. Yeah, absolutely. But then I offer myself Reiki at night when I'm going to sleep, and I offer probably close to 45 minutes when I wake up in the morning too. I'll give myself Reiki as well. So I make it. That's really my spiritual practice. Right? Is that?
And I love your saying your spiritual practice, you're a chaplain, right? So I've had some emails from people who are worried about religion and Reiki, and yet you actually are a chaplain and you're handling spirituality, right? So is there, for those people who are a little bit concerned about mixing religion and Reiki, could you tell them a little bit your point of view?
Well, yes, I could.
I get a lot of emails, so sorry I'm imposing on you because you actually have more kind of.
I know at the hospice, I would be part of the training. I would be asked to do part of the volunteer training. He talked to him about chaplains. He talked to him about Reiki as well, and when I mentioned Reiki as a spiritual practice, sometimes there'd be a clergy person present, and they'd be kind of shocked that I would put Reiki as a spiritual practice, and and they would sometimes we would get into a little back and forth on it, but sometimes I'd just be visibly upset with it, and it's at one point, someone who was there was another chaplain at the VNA, and he very specifically went into had a discussion with me, about Reiki being a spiritual practice. Um, I think it's because of its Buddhist background, or there's some churches just have a lot. I think it's because um, um, like the church is the only one who has that authority, that no one else can do healing but the person, ordained person, that's very much there, and well, there was a period of time, maybe in the late 90s, that a group of bishops in the Catholic Church came out very strongly. I mean, and they came out against Reiki, and because after I left the hospital as a chaplain, but they at St. Peter's, they said the bishop said there would be forbidden for anyone to do Reiki at the hospital. But how can they tell whatever you're doing in the hospital?
That's true, especially when you're in your meditation state, right? They cannot really see that.
There's nothing that we're doing, in the room. But that it went to that extent,
Wow.
I never let it interfere with my work in the hospitals. But I think it's a matter of authority, and but Jesus, sent out his disciples to heal people in the village. He didn't grasp this as something, that was only his. But it was this, it's a very spiritual thing, uh, uh, and the disciples went out into the villages and healed the people. So, so it was. So it did come up for me, but I didn't allow it to interfere with anything I taught or anything I did personally. So I think that um, the brothers never questioned anything, which was very helpful for me. They allowed me to do, the things that I felt that I needed to do. So they were supportive in that way. So that was helpful.
That was great. Thank you for sharing that. I always refer people to the Reiki principles or precepts, and I'm like, this is the embodiment of Reiki practice. Do not anger, do not worry.
I mean, everything there. I mean, it's just you have your meditation, you have your precepts, and then what more?
It's not evil, right? Someone who's telling you don't anger, don't worry, cannot. Like, it's just
Yes,
basic human.
my spiritual practice. That is my biggest part of my spiritual practice. Are the precepts and the meditation. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Bill. I do have something for you. So I offer every guest a drawing. So I did this drawing for you, and I hope you can see it.
That's so beautiful.
Thank you. So I was thinking of end of life, and we always see it as something, passing as something very dark or scary. And I don't know if because I've been practicing a lot with friends, the 5 elements, or when I go into meditation, I go into dissolving into nature. But I was like, this idea of dissolving into light, going back to the 5 elements, the earth.
Yes.
So a different approach to end of life. So
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much.
you're welcome. I'll be sending it to you. I'll just double check your mail after. So you should receive it hopefully next week. I'll send it before the end of the week.
All right, great.
Thank you for sharing your story. Is there anything that I forgot to ask? Because I went through all the documents and just wanted to make sure that I didn't forget anything that you would love to add.
No, because after my hospice work that I began to become, towards the end of my hospice work, I began to become more aware of Kathleen Prasad's work. And during these last few years, I've been becoming more involved, in the shelters and shelter work. And she taught me so much, and she has created, the let animals lead technique, where we just are there, and the animals come and take what they want, instead of chasing after them.
She's wonderful. I actually, when I was talking to her, I'm like, we should do the same with humans. It's the same approach,
Absolutely. That's why, when you talk about distance healing, but I mean that's all you're doing, you're just going into your holding that space for people, and so. But yeah, she was a great influence on me as well, and I really enjoy working with her.
And I love that you keep on training and keep on deepening your practice like all the time. And I find that so beautiful and inspiring as well.
Okay, well, thanks. Yeah, well, I have to do that. Yes.
And you still teach, right? You're still teaching Reiki?
Yeah, I was 40 years on my own in New Jersey, and I'm 88 years old now, and so the community asked me to come back closer, and so I'm in one of our communities in New Rochelle, and so I don't want people to be worrying about me, and so I made that decision to do that, but but I've kept my contacts, and I have Zoom, and I teach my Tai Chi classes on Zoom, and I'm teaching my Reiki classes on Zoom. I'm doing a Reiki class this Saturday, so I still, and I do my healing circle once a month on Zoom. So that's great. So I keep in touch with a lot of people in New Jersey, and it's, I'm not pushing for anything here in New Rochelle, New York, but I just say whatever the universe sends me, I'm here. But I don't go out and knock on doors anymore.
No, but I'll be sharing your website and all your details so people can reach out to you, especially if they're in New Rochelle. Like, they are lucky people to be around you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your time, and I'll be sharing this pretty soon. I'll be sending the drawing as well, and I'm looking forward to the Lancaster Retreat 2022. We're kidnapping you. I'm driving you down there to share with you. So I know it's 1 year away, but start packing.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Bill.